May we come with open heart and open mind and open spirit. Amen. My father spent his working life as a GP. At the end of his year as a house surgeon, which was also the first year of his marriage to my mother, he and she moved to Christchurch in the South Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand. He had purchased a GP practice in a very low socio-economic area and began what would become 40 years of serving and knowing families generation upon generation. He was gentle, yet firm, and had an understated way of being in the world. I grew up absorbing some of the stories of his life as a GP, and I realised in latter years how much his being has shaped my own philosophy and understanding of care for another human being. Let me tell you the story of the wood. It was winter, and Dad had arranged for wood to be delivered to the house. It duly arrived and was dumped outside their garage, also blocking the footpath. It was before I was born, and the house my family lived in was attached to the surgery. The house had 2 fireplaces, and we weren't as conscious of pollution from coal fires as we are now. During the evening surgery, a well-known patient had come for her appointment. Before she left, she commented on the pile of wood. "I see you got some wood delivered, Doctor," she said. "You might want to move it by tomorrow night. Otherwise, there's no knowing what those boys of mine will do with it." According to Dad, she was showing him great respect by giving him warning if he didn't get his act together and shift the wood the next day, that it might have walked down the road to her house. You may wonder why I think about the stories of my father's working life as I stand here to reflect on our readings and speak about my work as a chaplain in aged care. But as I have reflected on my life and my role in working with older people, I appreciate more and more who I am and what I bring to this ministry. I was shaped by a life of privilege and opportunity. And as I became more aware of poverty, the role of education and the sheer struggle faced by many families to make it through each day, I grew to recognise the impact we humans have on each other. Impact for growth and possibility, and impact that can hurt and crush the human spirit. Like some of you, I have also been shaped by illness, wonderful encouraging friends, grief at the death of family and close friends, joyously falling in love and becoming a stepmom. In my ministry, I have been deeply moved and humbled to sit alongside people during some of the most vulnerable and ordinary times in their lives, and known the presence and the grace of God. In New Zealand particularly, my years of ministry have also known a shadow, as the church debated and legislated whether people like me were suitable to be ministers because I am lesbian. This leads me to the passage from the prophet Micah in the 8th century BCE. The prophet pictures God charging Israel with a crime and taking them to court. The will of God is the topic of discussion. We could say it has been a matter of discussion ever since, especially what it means in reality. So imagine this courtroom setting, where a somewhat long-suffering God is having it out with the people of Israel. You might expect the tone of righteous anger. However, it strikes me more as one of sheer bewilderment. And even in the frustration, Micah almost shows God recounting what has happened in the Exodus with a sense of graciousness. The people then respond, at first a little astounded that God could want more from them. They try to guess which offerings and sacrifices could get them back on track with God. They think maybe if they worship correctly, that will do it. Maybe burnt offerings will work, the typical daily offerings at the temple. Maybe calves, rams, oils, or maybe, just maybe, it needs to be the firstborn child. Micah's response of what God requires is simply stated. Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. The time has come to walk the talk. Enough of all this attention on the detailed practices of religious faith. To offer sacrifices out of their religious context is meaningless. They will be like empty words, and so it is time to get down to the nitty-gritty. Time to face responsibilities, and in particular, ethical responsibility. Time to respond to God's challenge, to remember the covenant made with God, and to use this as the starting point for being in right relationship. When I first came to live in Australia, I worked, as many of you know, in an aged care home for people living with low-level dementia. For 6 months, my role was a pastoral one, offering care and providing a report about this care and the impact it had had on people's lives. It was one of the few times I had taken time to put on paper the essence of my work and what it meant to be made in the image of God when your body and mind no longer function as they used to. Of reflecting on the role of the church towards its members who may become hidden from view or put in the pastoral too hard basket because of our own sense of inadequacy and helplessness. Many of us, and many of you sitting here, face challenges to your health and well-being as you get older, and negotiate the challenge of living on a daily basis. The old question of who am I raises its head again as you face some loss of movement maybe in your body, or as your mind doesn't think as quickly as it used to. As you integrate the death of the person you have loved and look into your own future, knowing life is limited for all of us. Many of you have shown and continue to show great tenacity to wrestle with everyday struggles, to find new ways of doing things, adapting to limitations. You realise some things aren't as important as they once were, and you live more simply. Time shared with family and friends become more important. In my ministry, as a chaplain now, I move among people who at times feel anxious, helpless, and who struggle to find meaning in their lives. People who were once sure of who they were, who knew they were valued, who had a recognised place in their family and community, and who now wonder how they will negotiate this strange land they have found themselves in. I am challenged to face my own sense of helplessness as I offer love and kindness and care. I am challenged to educate myself and equip myself with the skills required to do the hard work of learning from the life stories not only of myself but of others, and to face what it means to feel separated from myself and from God at times in my life. For me, this is living out what it means to do justice. I sometimes think the people living with dementia are the forgotten people of our time, the modern-day lepers. I continue to reflect on what it means to be made in the image of God when we live with dementia. As we, ourselves, family and friend face the impact of this illness, I wonder if we mistakenly think God is lost for people with dementia. People may no longer know God or who God is for them, or be able to recognise and name the members of their family and close friends. Yet as I remind people, God always knows us, even when we do not know or understand the mystery we name God. I sometimes think we find it easier to think of newborn, cuddly babies or bouncing toddlers as made in the image of God than we do people with dementia. In them we see potential and hope, whereas it is easy to fall into the trap or belief that everything is downhill leading to death the moment a diagnosis of dementia is given. That life and the fullness of life is now over, and the person has become lesser and lesser of who they used to be. People who live with dementia are still and always will be fully human, with feelings, with thoughts, bodily functions and attitude. Do we really believe we are less human because we have an illness which limits our function? Do we really believe we fail at this point to be made in the image of God? Like any human being, people with dementia thrive on love and kindness, patience and understanding. It can be the most confusing of times. The words may no longer make sense, the frustrations seem difficult to manage, and the unpredictability almost too much to bear. As people of God, we are called to understand inequality, to look out for the people others no longer see, or who they no longer recognise as needing our care and our love, who may be the least of these. We are called to meet the struggles of illness and despair with deep kindness our hearts can offer, to continue to bear witness to the life of one another, even when it seems unbearable to us. For you see, to be in right relationship with God is no easy, soft option. For me, it means facing the suffering I see in others and facing my own suffering. But it means choosing to move beyond the suffering and not letting it paralyse me, putting my words into action and walking the talk. I offer care when people are at their most vulnerable. And through this, I become vulnerable myself. I come to the intersection between my strength and my vulnerability. I become the least of these and the most of these. I am both giver and receiver. And yet it is more than this. When I face uncertainty, vulnerability about what will best serve the people I care for, I am reminded again that it is the serving of the people which must take precedence. This, in turn, takes me to my deepest learning point, asking me to draw on my skills, experience, and compassion in order to provide what is needed. As my Father before me, I am required to care for all who come into my midst, to treat all with the same respect, the same dignity, love and kindness, and not to favour one over the other. For all are equal in the eyes and the grace of God. I have borne witness to expressions of loneliness, separation from self and God, struggles to find meaning in life, deep anxiety, and the desire to live in good connection with the people around us. I have learned to serve and not to fix, and to live in the present moment. I have come to know that kindness triumphs over justice, over judgment and resistance, and above all that the generosity of spirit can be given and received regardless of mental capacity and physical ability. My life is rich. I walk in the company of God's beloved people, and I am forever changed. As a minister, as a human being, as a leader in pastoral care, may I continue to offer a framework for understanding what it means to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with God. Amen.